Call the meeting to order. We are in quorum. Would you please stand for the invocation today delivered by Justin Huggendorf of the Hill Country Church and remain standing for the pledge.
Thank you. If you could join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, so we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. I know that we have some employee recognitions this morning. Are there any other proclamations or anything? It's employee. Okay, good.
Okay, Mayor, Council, we have a new employee, a promotion, and an employee recognition that we would like to present to you this morning. And I'll start with a new employee, and I think representatives from the police department are going to help me with this one. If I could get Chief 4-Hour and Alyssa Rivera to come up. For Braxton, go ahead. Go ahead, Braxton.
Morning. So this is Alyssa Rivera. As y'all know, in the budget, we had requested a community outreach liaison, and she was hired for that position. Alyssa is a native of Fredericksburg. She was born and raised here, went to Fredericksburg High School, went off to college, got 2 degrees, one from Dallas Baptist University, one from Texas A&M University, a master's at A&M in education. Since she has been on board with us for about a month now for that position, and she's been doing a really good job. She's jumped in and already done some great work on our website. If you want to take a look at that, she's already managed a few community outreach projects, and she's expanded our social media. So we're expecting really good things from her, and we're excited to have her on board.
I put her on the spot at the last coffee with the city manager, and I promised I wouldn't do that today. So welcome aboard, Alyssa. We have one promotion. If I could get Leslie Embry to come up, please. Okay, Leslie Embry has been with us for about 7 years now. Leslie. She started at a receptionist desk up front, which is a very important position, touches a lot of people every day. It doesn't matter what the situation is, whether it's a question about a water bill or during an emergency, routing calls to the right people. She's a people person. She works well with all folks, and she's very motivated at the same time. She wasn't satisfied with that position, so she has moved up through the organization and recently graduated from the Texas Tech Highland Lakes leadership program. She has a class project she'll be presenting here in a couple of weeks to the council, but was recently promoted to assistant to the city secretary. Again, this is another position that the council added during the budget this year. Well deserved. She's doing a lot of those functions already. She will be doing a lot of other things too, assisting Shelley. Shelley's been a one-person department for a while now, and this will be much appreciated help in that department, and I have all the confidence in the world in Leslie. So congratulations, Leslie.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity. I have to say thank you to Shelley. She definitely was my pull to do this, and I've been working with her for the last 5 years, I think now. So I am excited to be back in her department. Thank you to Clinton for pushing that too and making that happen, and I'm super excited. Y'all know this is not only I have passion for my job, but this is my town. So y'all know I have a passion for that. Thanks to my husband, Bill Embry. He came today to support me. He gets the bounce back of everything every day that I take home, and he watches me cry, scream, fight, all of the above. And he wants to leave to go hunting. Our anniversary is tomorrow, so he's out of here. So thank you to him, too, for the big support. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay, we have 2 employee recognitions. The first one in the police department, Victor Martinez. If I could have Victor come up, please. So this is 3 recognitions. The first one was back in March, the last one in May. I'm going to read some of these emails to you. If I could, the first one comes from County Attorney Steve Wadsworth. And he mentions he wanted to let the police department know, this is a letter to Chief 4-Hour, even though our jury trial this week ended with a not guilty verdict, the officers Schmidt and Martinez did a great job in court. Everyone thought they testified well, especially Martinez. I think this is wonderful and shows the jury and our officers care for their cases. So that's the first one. Thank you, and let the officers know. We appreciate the hard work. That's the first one. The second one, and you never know what these guys are going to deal with any given day or in the middle of the night. This actually happened at 3 a.m. Back at the end of March. This comes from a Gerald and Diana Phillips. Again, to Chief 4-Hour. Chief, we wanted to take a moment and say how much we appreciated our police officers and SWAT team in action Sunday morning a week ago around 3 a.m. They had someone near their guest house that was having an episode, psychotic episode. There was a gun involved. There were a lot of people staying at this place. There were about 6 officers in SWAT gear with shields and you name it, trying to diffuse the situation. She talks about how calmly they diffused the situation, how they were told to calmly shelter in place. Says a lot about just how remarkable the situation was handled. If you can put yourself in a position like that where you have someone with a gun that's not quite right, and a lot of people involved, these are the things literally that happen at 3 in the morning. All the time that these guys are involved in while we're sleeping. They keep this town safe every single day. The third email comes from Amy Dooley. And again, you never know, what kind of call you're going to get. This particular email from Amy, she called the police department and thought she had lost her car. Her car had been stolen. It was a Honda Pilot. She stated that the police department was very helpful in helping her find her car, which was parked where she parked it. She just couldn't remember exactly where she had parked it. So again, these guys don't laugh. They take everything seriously, but sometimes it's a little bit more fun. So help join me in giving a hand to Victor Martinez for a job. Okay, now if I could have Shelley Goodwin join me up here. So Shelley Goodwin has been our city secretary for about 5 years now. She's been in the business for a long time, a number of different cities. She is a city secretary through and through. She knows her job very well. She does it every day. She anticipates the needs of staff and council. You can tell that she's very passionate, and she's also very passionate about helping other people grow in their careers and become city secretaries. So recently, Shelley was given the Distinguished Service Award by the Texas Municipal Clerks Association. This is a very prestigious award that's given out annually to just a handful of people. I want to read just a little bit. The Distinguished Service Award is awarded to an individual who has distinguished themselves by making a significant contribution throughout their career to promote the municipal clerk profession, TMCA Incorporated, and their peers. Nominees must be a TRMC, a municipal clerk, have been a member of TMCA for the last 10 years, and must have demonstrated a significant contribution to the city secretary profession, their community, or the TMCA. The Distinguished Service Award is selected by the TMCA Executive Board. The winner is announced at the annual TMCA Awards banquet held at TMCCP, and I don't know what all, Advanced Institute Seminar in the fall, which she just attended. So congratulations on your award, and congratulations on a job well done every day, Shelley.
Thank you, Clinton and staff, and constant reminder of the good people we have working for us. All right, we're now at the consent agenda. Oh, sorry. Thank you. We're now at council comments.
So good morning. I'll jump in. We were off, I say technically off for 3 weeks. There was a pause of 3 weeks, but a lot of activity. Starting off October 17th, Chamber of Commerce. They'll have their final leadership breakfast November 15th, and there's details on the website if you're interested in attending that. The State of the Burg Economic Summit received excellent feedback from participants. They rated a 4.6 on a 5.0 scale, so a job well done. A lot of very positive feedback. Currently, the Chamber has about 105 entries for the Light of Night Christmas Parade. It'll be a 30-minute live broadcast on CBS Austin, and then it'll be live streamed with FPG.live after that. And the search committee is continuing their efforts for Penny's successor, and they're making progress, but nothing to report on that yet. October 24th, CVB continues with the Tourism Master Plan project, and the next visit from the team will take place over the dates of December 11th through the 13th, and a final report should be produced and presented to the CVB board on or about January board meeting, and Brady may comment on that a little bit later. October 26th, we had a town hall meeting in my backyard. I think it was well attended by citizens, covering a wide array of issues from short-term rentals to RV parking, tourism, animal control issues, and I think we added cats and squirrels to that list, Clinton, as well. But all things are open during these events, so I encourage anyone to come to these events. Please, this is an open opportunity to speak about anything that's on your mind. Finally, an incredible honor, November 10th, which is a Marine birthday. I've been asked to join Tammy King and General Bissen to attend the FISD school session. There will be a total of 10 veterans speaking to 35 classrooms at FISD, how military experience benefited our lives and professional careers. So incredibly honored to be in this group of veterans, but looking forward to that opportunity as well. So thank you much.
I just wanted to kind of update and make sure. I know we had a few comments about Food and Wine Fest. We're not canceling the Food and Wine Fest. I want everybody to understand that we're giving it a year. We're kind of restructuring it, trying to bring in maybe a little bit better attention. I've been on that thing for 33 years, so and I did work it this last Saturday when we had the event. our attendance has been down, and so we're trying to rejuvenate it. We appreciate all the people that have helped, and there are a lot of them that have helped for 30 years. So we're just giving it, we're regrouping and trying to bring it back and maybe bring up the activities and our attendance on it. So we're not killing it. It's going to be there. We're just taking a week or a year off. Thanks.
On October the 18th, I attended the Chamber Economic Summit with Ray Perryman. Very enlightening. He thinks very highly of where we're located in the state. It's a great region to be as the economy slows down. He said we shouldn't have any issue or anything to worry about, in his opinion. On October the 20th, I attended the EDC meeting, and again, it was in Tim's report, a lot of activity, a lot of interest still in Fredericksburg. So the future still looks bright for us, which I'm happy about. Yesterday, the Charter Review Committee met. Our next meeting, and hopefully our last, will be November the 20th. We're getting close for our recommendations to the City Council, and we'll meet again on the 20th to review what we've talked about and hopefully present that to the council soon. And by the way, Texas Rangers won the World Series first time ever, so thank you.
Christmas has arrived at Market Plots. I drove by this morning and they are setting up the tree and the German pyramid, and ice pond is being set up at Kinder Hall. Excited about that. The Parks Master Plan draft has been released, and the advisory committee will be meeting about that next week to review and make edits.
Thank you. Now we're ready for the consent agenda. We have 3 items on this agenda. One is to consider the minutes from the previous meeting, October 17th, then to consider the appointment of some board of directors to the board of directors of the Convention Visitors Bureau, KK Welch, Chris Izipiranud, and David Shields. Excuse me. And consider the approval of a professional services agreement between the city and Lucy Pearson, prosecutor in our municipal court. Council, do you want to consider these together or pull one out for separate?
Motion we approve. Make a motion we approve all 3 or all 4 the items 1, 2, and 3 and C.
Second.
Motion second to approve these items as a consent agenda. Any further discussion?
Yes. Can we please have a calendar so we know when there are appointments coming up? Because it's hard to, these are great people and I'm excited to have them on, but going forward, it sure would be nice to know ahead of time.
Okay.
We can.
So that advisory go to Shelley.
I will provide you with the calendar. Usually we appoint 2 times a year, but this one kind of snuck in. So I'll get better at providing you that information.
Anything else? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 7A, consider the proposed amendments to the zoning municipal code, municipal ordinances as part of the City of Fredericksburg Code of Ordinances regarding short-term rentals, Z2318. I need a motion to take this from the table.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second to remove this to the table and have to recuse. Okay, Mr. Briley's refusing. Thank you. All in favor of the motion to remove from the table, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Anna, presentation by staff.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. We're here again one more time for the short-term rental ordinance. We expect this to be the final revision. We've made changes based on your comments from the last meeting, and staff has begun the process of updating our information, what we'll be putting out on the website and out to citizens so that everybody's on the same page. So the summary I've given is trying to be very high level at this point. Just what are the actual changes from the 2022 ordinance and the minor changes that were made from the last last discussion. So staff does recommend the proposed amendments to the ordinance to address the availability of housing options, provide additional clarification for future permitting, remittance of hotel occupancy taxes, and enforcement. P&Z held their public hearing on September 7th and made a recommendation for approval with 11 changes. Those recommendations were considered by City Council on October 3rd. Changes suggested by City Council at the October 17th meeting are included in this draft. So some of the topics: non-conforming uses. And this will allow all existing legally operating STRs to continue to operate, transfer permits, and renew permits annually. Existing permits must come into compliance with the following: life safety, 24-hour contact, signage, food service, host rules, conduct on premises, duration of rental, hotel occupancy tax, remittance, application information, and advertising. Occupancy maximums and parking requirements for existing permits will not be required to meet the new ordinance requirements. Long-term rentals. This allows an STR to switch to a long-term rental by notifying staff and continuing to remit a zero hot report and a yearly permit. Parking. New permits will have to provide 1 parking space per bedroom. Facilities must park 60% of total occupancy. Tandem parking is allowed and no credit for on-street parking. All required parking must be on-site, and existing permits will not have to come into compliance with the new rules. Occupancy. Proposed occupancy of 2 people per bedroom plus 2 with an overall max of 12. Occupant definition is not tied to age. All persons count toward the maximum occupancy. Existing permits with higher occupancy are not required to come into compliance at renewal. Special exceptions. In place of the conditional use permit process, this ordinance creates a special exception that would require approval by the Zoning Board of Adjustment based on new criteria, along with other variance procedures. Special exceptions would be available for stranded R1 and R2 properties, or in order to increase occupancy or reduce parking requirements. R1 and R2 zone stranded properties. R2 zoning will now be treated like R1 and will no longer allow new unoccupied STRs by right. There is a provision for stranded properties. For a stranded property to be eligible to apply for that special exception for an STR unoccupied, there must be 50% of other properties within a 200-foot radius that are either non-residential uses or STRs. And that's how the draft is written. Based on research that staff has done in the meantime since we last met, we are amending our recommendation to suggest that we only include central business district zoning, so that's the red in the zoning map, and C2 zoning instead of just non-residential. So this would exclude C1 commercial, which is the fuchsia on the map. So part of the thought behind that is that a C1 neighborhood commercial property is really not a nuisance. They blend in well with the neighborhoods already and do not have a nighttime impact, where a C2 or a CBD commercial property has a much more intense use. So we would remove C1 from that calculation and only include CBD zoning and C2 zoning. Condos in R3. So the new ordinance prohibits new STR condos in any zoning district and removes STR use in R3 multifamily zoning. And staff recommends this change in order to preserve the R3 housing stock. Transfers are allowed, including non-conforming uses in good standing, within 90 days of the sale of the property. If operating as an STR within the 90-day transfer period, a new STR must comply with all applicable regulations in the new ordinance, regardless of whether or not the transfer application has been submitted, and transfers will require new inspection. The proposed amendment ordinance will continue a yearly permit that requires an annual inspection, and all life safety requirements must come into compliance at the time of the inspection. STR regulations and requirements. What was previously located in section 5.401 will be moved to section 20-222 in this ordinance, out of the zoning ordinance. So enforcement This allows permit suspension for the failure to pay hot. It addresses repeat offenses and clarifies minor and major violations. So 3 minor violations will equal 1 major violation, and 3 majors within 12 months will send the permit in front of City Council for consider suspension up to 90 days. The appeal of a permit that's denied at the administrative level will be appealed to City Council. And City Council will have the ability to revoke or suspend a permit. So I think one of the few things that we would want to talk about would be the stranded properties, to kind of go over some scenarios for that. And just to remind you that the stranded property was really to kind of alleviate pressure where a property is zoned R1 or R2 and is requesting an occupied STR permit, and otherwise is stranded. There's a certain number, or obviously, but what we need to decide is if that's 50% or 75%, or if you've got another suggestion. But we've got a few scenarios to look at for consideration. And so the only other change, there was language about host rules and compliance, or some of the rules that were required on site that the operator had to notify. And we had language about fire and the county burn ban. I misspoke at the last meeting. County burn ban is only outside of the city limits. So it is the county. Within the city, the fire marshal, we have a separate zoning ordinance. So we've only referenced that zoning ordinance, that ordinance for fire inside the city limits. So not to confuse it with the county burn ban. So that's the summary of the proposed changes. And if you want to jump into the special exceptions, we can do that. Or if there's anything else you wanted to clarify, happy to answer any questions.
One question on the burn ban in the county. Does the fire marshal typically call for a burn ban within the city as well? Or is that
No, they're not tied. Come on, Reagan. I'll definitely prefer you to answer.
Good morning, council. So the burn ban in the county is addressed with the county fire chiefs and put in through the county judge. The fire ordinance or the outdoor burning ordinance that we have in the city is in effect at all times, whether there's a burn ban or not in the county.
in the city?
Yeah, in the city, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, we'll open the discussion now for the specifics in this. No, because there's no public hearing called for this. We do have some comments. But I want to get the sense of council's direction before.
You know, at what point will you talk us through the difference between the 50 and the 75%? Is that now or later?
If you're ready, we can do that now.
I'm ready.
Thank you.
Okay. So these are the stranded properties, and the big change from the current ordinance to the proposed is using a 200-foot boundary radius instead of a block, which is inconsistent. So the 200-foot radius considers things across the street and behind, anything within that 200-foot circle. So Shelby was able to pull a few actual scenarios for R2 and R1 to look at this changing, opening it up to consider more things than just STRs. The 2022 ordinance only considered other STRs in the calculation, which sounds good in the middle of a neighborhood, but in these places where commercial abuts residential, I think we need to be more open to other commercial uses. So here's an example where you've got a 200-foot boundary that includes 24 properties. 15 of those are residential, 9 are commercial, 3 are STRs. And so this property in the middle of West Austin Street would qualify for the 50%, but not the 75%. And again, that is just to qualify to apply to go to the zoning board of adjustment for a special exception. Here's another one on West Creek. 21 properties within the 200 foot boundary. 17 of those are residential, 5 are commercial, 6 are STRs. So the property would not qualify for the 50% or the 75%, but this is across from Hill and Vine, for example. West San Antonio, again, you've got R2 abutting Central Business District, 1 block off of Main, 19 properties within the boundary, 11 are residential, 8 are commercial, 4 are STRs. So 12 properties within the 19 are non-residential uses, and the property would qualify at the 50%, but would not qualify for 75% at the 75%. And so every property that we looked at, none of them qualified at the 75%. Here's the Elk Street example. Again, 18 properties in the boundary, 14 are residential, 2 commercial, 1 was a public facility. So our current recommendation would just to count CBD and C2 zoning. This has a museum, public facilities in that area as well.
So would that qualify or not? What? Yes on 75?
No, not on 75, but for 50, yes. Okay. And then this is this new criteria for special exception consideration. This is what the Zoning Board of Adjustment would have to look at. So is it likely to disrupt adjacent owners' right to their quiet enjoyment of the property by considering whether the lot size are too small or if the noise is likely to affect the neighborhood, whether operation as an STR in the property's zoning district is compatible with the quality of the surrounding area, whether such operation would substantially impact nearby streets, including whether the property provides only limited off-street parking. They must consider so in some cases, right, there were like R2 properties in the historic district that lost their permit, failed to renew it. And so it might be a situation like that where there is some history of operating an STR. They could take into consideration the history of if there are any complaints or citations on that property. Whether it'll impact the residential quality of the neighborhood and the lot size or the size of the structure itself. So if you have any thoughts on the 200-foot boundary and what should be included in that and how many?
What's the argument for 50 instead of 75 legally? Is it that what is it that we need to consider when we look at the difference between 50 and 75?
So the purpose of the special exception provision is to create basically a safety valve to allow properties that might otherwise sue the city to apply for and potentially obtain a special exception. So the goal is to have a special exception that actually does allow them to qualify and then allows the Board of Adjustment to exercise their discretion in considering whether a special exception is appropriate or not. So this is just the first bar when a property applies for a special exception. There's still the additional overview of the Board of Adjustment after that step.
And at this point, no one is qualified for the 75%. So it hasn't been effective.
And with the term change from CUP to special exception, the criteria is different now. So it is, I think, would it be correct that it gives the ZBA more latitude in determining? Because I think some of the concerns I've heard is that a CUP is just a rubber stamp for P&Z to then approve.
So a special exception is definitely not a rubber stamp. The Board of Adjustment does have discretion to consider criteria laid out in state law as well as the criteria laid out in this ordinance, and to determine whether or not operations as a special exception for an STR are appropriate in that particular spot. Approving one special exception for one property does not create precedent to grant a special exception to another property, because every property is different and the board considers these factors for every single property that comes before it. So there's no concern with setting precedent if they approve a couple of STR special exceptions and then deny others. So that concern would not really be an issue.
So they could qualify for the 50% provision, but not qualify for others, is what you're saying.
Right. The Board of Adjustment may look at the property and say there's not enough parking to make this particular property appropriate for a special exception. I can't really think of others off the top of my head, but they can look at specific features of each individual property and say that this is not going to be appropriate for an STR use.
What are the other uses when it says other non-residential use? Are we talking strictly the zoning category, or are there other ways to differentiate that? What are other residential uses that would be considered in this percentage?
So the way that the current ordinance is drafted, use would not look necessarily at the zoning of the property. For example, on the Elk example, one of the museum properties is used by the museum but is zoned residential. But we would look at the use to determine whether it would be appropriate within that percentage calculation. However, I do agree with Anna's recommendation to use the zoning of CBD C2. I would also add community facility to that. But I think that eliminating C1 from that category would be acceptable.
Would be what?
Would be acceptable.
Okay. And is that because the circumstances that we have is that currently the C1 use blends fairly well with the STR uses already.
Yes, it's a lighter intensity of use. So C1 properties aren't operating late at night. It's not like a convenience store. Their operations usually shut down at 5 o'clock. So it's staff's opinion that those uses are compatible with long-term residential use.
Okay. Anything else, council, on that percentage issue or other residential use considered in stranded designations?
So is the recommendation for the CBD and C2 and community facility, or just CBD C2? What are examples of community facilities? Because I'm not wanting to necessarily encourage a lot of STRs next to schools. That's what I'm getting at.
So with community facility, do you have the zoning ordinance?
Public facility, yes. Schools, yes, do have public facility.
So it would be schools, museums, I guess libraries, most likely.
And I will say our third-party GIS company is working on a tool for us for this 200-foot boundary, so that it'll be easy for hopefully anyone, but at least staff, to do what I'm doing on the screen and have a 200-foot radius tool so that you could look at this. Because right now it does take staff some time to do the analysis. So they've not written that algorithm, and it's something they can. So yes, this is the middle school, and it's got public facility zoning, for example.
Without knowing all the properties, I think maybe keep it at CBD and C2, not adding public facility. I don't have a good idea of the number of properties affected.
Well, like this middle school example, it's surrounded by R1 and R2, so that wouldn't qualify.
Well, if you look at St. Mary's, which is on San Antonio and Creek Street, they've got short-term rentals all around that place.
Yeah, but like back to the old middle school, whatever. It's just counting that as one of the properties toward the 75% or the 50%.
True, but it's surrounded by R1 and R2, so R1 and R2 can't apply for stranding. Yes, they can. I'm sorry. You're right.
You like to specify, you want to specify CBD
C2.
and
For heavier
C2,
use.
but not public space.
Yes.
Public space.
We could also potentially carve out schools from the CF category if you wished for the purposes of this special exception. If you find that it's not appropriate to allow additional STR uses by special exception adjacent to schools.
I would love that because you don't have to report if you're a sexual offender. You're registered as one if you're at a place less than 7 days.
So if they exempted schools, that'd be okay?
Yes.
You prefer it to remain public?
School, if we can exempt school, I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Exempt school?
So do you go to Holy Ghost and Bethany, who's got free schools? I mean, they're right there on.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a private school that's not zoned public facilities. They're zoned R2. I think Ambleside's R2, and Heritage is like R4.
They're covered in the school
It would be
designation.
if it's IU, so I know.
Schools covered.
Yeah, that might be.
You get the intention.
So I mean, like Holy Ghost, that's a daycare, right? That's CBD zoning, so that's not going to apply. Looks like St. Mary's has R2 zoning, so would not be taken into consideration. So I think your biggest area of concern would be the middle school, if you want to exempt that. And it's just the calculation.
Yes.
It's literally so.
Is this a response to 50 versus 75, keeping the 70, but specifying? I mean, keeping the 50, but specifying those, that particular exception.
So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, me
So CBD, C2, and community facility with the exception of school operations zone community facility. Or are you saying CBD, C2, and CF excluding schools in all of those districts? Is that
Well, because the schools are zoned differently. So
right? The
you
difficulty
can't
we
do it by
have is
use, can you?
right because private schools may not be in a community facility zone,
They're not.
whereas public schools we do know where they are, but private schools it's trickier. So they may be zoned residential or commercial.
So if it were the designation of a public facility school and a private school could be considered in the exception by the PFZ as ZBA with regard to how it would impact neighborhood, impact adjacent properties, et cetera. Is that what I'm hearing?
We could, in fact, easily add a criteria for the special exception consideration, saying whether or not schools are located within the 200-foot radius. That way we can sort of address that concern when ZBA is reviewing, and we'll address the community facility school concern kind of at the application level.
Well, since we're doing this, that's what I just go ahead and make that statement.
Great.
I mean, since we're doing this now, and we would like not to have to do this again for a while.
It's tradition. Come on.
Council, okay, anything else about special exception and stranded properties? Not that I'm closing it, I'm just wanting to make sure we move.
It sounds like 50% is good with y'all.
Yeah,
Is the-
with those exceptions. I mean, with those designations. Council, I would like to propose that we remove the posting of a physical permit, and I have 3 reasons. One is that it is a staff issue and work. It does issue and create another work issue for staff. Make sure we have these, that they're there, et cetera. The enforcement of police and so forth. But when it would become, I'm open to your response about, but my thinking is when it would become necessary to have that posting. It would be a police matter more than likely, and they're going to have electronic lists and be able to determine right away if they're called whether it's an STR, whether it has ADUs, et cetera, et cetera. And if I'm wrong about this, is the chief in here? Chief, if I'm wrong about this, let me know, please. A physical permit might raise some security issues with the property, not just what's on it, but it might identify that property as unoccupied at sometimes it might draw some illegal activities and that sort of thing. And that's not the case with a residence. So as I began to think about this again, I thought, well, maybe that would be something we could take off the table, because for practical purposes, identifying an STR is going to be done by the police at the time it needs to be done. And I don't know what else we need to identify it for unless y'all.
I think this is kind of like, this whole thing is a lowest common denominator thing, right? People can always be good neighbors and do better. And I think it would be wonderful if people alerted their neighbors, hey, we're an STR and this is this is a number you can call. That's what our neighbors have done. It's been great. We have a good relationship. If there's some sort of online database where if there's an emergency, the neighbor could find out who to call, I think that would be great. But I agree. I don't think there's a point in this.
Okay, so that is section, what is that, 220, 221, 2E. To just pull that out completely is my recommendation. Chief, if I'm missing anything with regard to that, my discussion about the actual physical permit itself on the building.
No, sir. We've been getting updated spreadsheets from development services on the active list of STRs. We put those in all the patrol cars. They have on the tablets. They can pull them up. Most of the time, if we get a call to a residence, when they respond to whatever call that is, they find out that it's an STR as soon as they make contact with whoever is at the residence anyway. They'll verify it through the spreadsheet and handle whatever call or business they need to handle. So.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you.
Mayor.
So that would be, we're going to take these as separate motions when we get to that time. Is that the procedure? Each one of these would be a separate motion.
We can do it separately, but I'm also drafting so that someone could make it in one motion if they wished.
Okay.
Mayor, so currently you have to have a physical posting inside so that so we want to keep that. So maybe it's just striking that it's.
We did. It was to identify
exterior
property from the street or from outside only. But yes, keeping it inside, I think is obviously that's your intention, right, Emily?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think most people, I've got one on each side. We know there is STRs. I can tell you the ones in the block. Most people.
I hear a lot of stories about people finding them compatible with their lifestyle, but also hear from others, as neighbors and so forth. That's why we're a year later after the task force first met, still looking at this. I'll just go through my list, and then I just have a couple more things. Should we, and what is the reason to not add? I'm looking at the definitions page, it's right before 2221. So whatever, yeah, it's section 2220 definitions. Under the last one, short-term rental unoccupied or STR unoccupied. Do we need to add STR facility to those three? At the end, Rachel, it is a short-term rental within a lawful residential dwelling that is not operating as an STR ADU or STR B&B. Should we add STR facility?
Right. So Anna and I have discussed this somewhat extensively. So STR facilities are basically clusters of STR unoccupied units. So from our perspective, it does not make much sense to include STR facilities in that definition because all STR facilities will be a collection of STR unoccupieds, but not all STR unoccupieds are going to be STR facilities. That is how we read it. If that does not make sense, though.
That's what I was asking.
Okay.
Your opinion.
Great.
And you're giving, and I'm going to take comments before we vote. I only have 3. that have signed up to speak? Or before we finalize the discussion today? So that also applies to zoning ordinance definitions later in the document. My other issue is this, in section 6, amending section 5.500 of Appendix B zoning ordinance of the municipal code. Rachel, this is a question I'm asking for your guidance here. Since this appears in Article 7 of the Muni Code, do we need to specify it in this section of the zoning ordinance? Because doesn't that pull the trigger for us to need to notify everyone, go through hearings and so forth? If we were, since it's already in the Muni Code and therefore operational and effective, rather than putting in the zoning code, which might create some issues for us to be more nimble?
So you're asking about just kind of eliminating the creation of the special exception in the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
So the problem we run into there is that the special exception is explicitly a zoning tool. So we can refer to permitting regulations and incorporate those by reference, but we can't go the other way. We can't incorporate zoning regulations by reference into the zoning code.
Okay.
So state law's intention is for us to have to go through that public hearing process when we amend those particular provisions.
So what I'm hearing you say, in your world, which I appreciate, and I appreciate that it's not my world, that the legalese responsibility that we must follow, it needs to stay listed as a zoning reference, even if it's in our Muni Code.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Or special exceptions, right? There's other things. If we were to change something else related to STRs, it's separate.
Right. Anything else contained in the just general STR ordinance, we can change that just as a regular ordinance amendment. But the zoning specific mechanisms like the special exception, we do have to handle that from a zoning perspective.
Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. That's my list, folks. Are you ready to hear from our commenters, or do you want to? John Ellis? By the way, your written comments were submitted to the council.
Okay, great. Well, I will be brief. I know I have to be brief. Mayor, good morning, council. My name is John Ellis. My wife Bethany and I are privileged to have a historic property here in Fredericksburg that we lease to tenants on a short-term basis when we're not able to use it. And the council has already addressed in the comments one of the comments that I had. I've got 3 issues I wanted to bring forth today. I realize I may be swimming up against this current on some of these, but some have said taking the road less traveled can make all the difference. So with that, I'll jump in. R2 and Historic District. A recent change since the last meeting has been to remove the ability for a property owner that's R2 within the Historic District to seek a special exception. I think that should be a classification that should continue and encourage the council to add that back in. It is currently in the 2022 ordinance that allows R2 properties in the Historic District to seek a conditional use permit. And the reason is historic properties come with unique characteristics, unique preservation requirements, unique expenses. And the council should do everything it can to enable owners of those properties to allow them to help offset that income to make sure they can preserve the treasures of this community. And so I think that an R2 property, which is a mixed-use residential in the historic district, should have an independent right to seek a special exception. They would still have to meet all the other requirements in order to get a permit for an STR unoccupied. But this could be a way that the council, an easy way the council can help foster the preservation of our historic homes. The reality is, as an owner of a historic home, they do come with unique preservation requirements and expenses. My home's been thankfully standing there for over 150 years, but it's going to take a lot of upkeep and maintenance to keep it there. And other properties the same way. In addition, historic homes typically do not lend themselves to the modern lifestyle. So while they are great to visit on the weekend for a short stay or for a visit, they may not be the ideal property for somebody to buy as a family their first home with a 1-bedroom, 1-bath right next to the central business district. But they do make great properties for people to visit. And in keeping with preserving the properties, short-term use allows for less use on those properties, less wear and tear than a long-term tenant. And so I think that that's a property exception that should be considered. So it was in the last draft. It hasn't been in every draft. My written comments were incorrect on that point, and I apologize. But it's in the current 2022 ordinance as one of the characterizations that can get a special exception. I think it should be reinstated. The second one is on the STR facility for R2 properties that abut commercial properties. These properties have already been burdened by the council with the zoning regulations of having next door neighbors that are highly trafficked commercial businesses. R2 properties are intended to be a mixed use residential. That was another exception that was in the latest draft before the current proposal that's before the council today. I think that similar to my point on resident historic properties, R2 properties that are next to highly trafficked commercial businesses are less desirable for long-term use. People don't want to live next to a bar or a gas station or other highly trafficked commercial businesses. But they do provide a way for additional housing for short-term basis for guests that are coming to our community that are important lifeblood for this community and this economy. And so I think that should be a separate exception, which was in the previous iterations of the draft, independent from this 50% or whatever requirement threshold you're going to have on the 200-foot radius. If you're abutting a highly trafficked commercial business, that in itself should be sufficient burden to justify seeking a special exception, not an automatic right under the current proposals, but independent qualification that should allow those property owners to consider developing an STR facility, which would allow for multiple dwelling units if the property is of sufficient size and character to allow for that. And that would be a good use of the properties. And we're talking about a very small number of properties. I know the council and the city have at their disposal the exact number, but R2s in the historic district, there's roughly 272 properties by my count. That's probably off by a little bit. Currently, about 40% of those are already operating as short-term rentals. So for my first point, it's not going to be a lot of properties that are impacted, and it's even less for properties that abut highly trafficked commercial properties. The last point was on the signage, and the mayor's comments have already addressed that. I hadn't heard any of the public comments about the potential unintended consequences of inviting vandalism or other illicit criminal activity for properties that are not occupied on a regular basis. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your diligence. I have not been to all these meetings, but I assure you I've watched them all from afar. And I appreciate this council's deliberation and the hard work for everybody involved in trying to find striking the appropriate balance for these issues.
Thank you. Mike Mahoney.
Admittedly, I'm concerned that we're lowering the barrier and broadening the availability of the special exceptions in the residential neighborhoods from 75 to 50%. This broader definition of stranded property is going to allow more properties to apply for special exceptions. This effectively is shifting the city's duty to protect the existing neighborhoods from intrusion and encroachment by STRs. And now you're putting the burden on the neighborhoods to come in and repeatedly testify in front of the Board of Adjustment hearings in order to try to defend their quiet enjoyment of their properties. The stranded property definition we have now was intended to be very narrow in its work. It has not been shown that there are no properties which qualify for special exception. All that's been shown is that those that have applied have not qualified. It's a big difference. I understand the legal concern about safety valve, etc. But drawing this 200-foot circle already enlarges the number of properties that are going to be considered for special exceptions. And now the proposal is to add and lower that barrier to 50% density, if you will. There were a few examples shown. I'd like to show one. This is a property, just a hypothetical property here in the little circle. All of these are STRs. This property, there's 14 properties in this area under the circle that would qualify. 8 of them in this diagram would be STRs, all the orange ones. This property has it's not stranded by any definition, but this property would be a stranded property under this definition. Anything that looks like this, this is hardly what we envisioned the stranded property exception was intended to do. I urge you, if you're going to use the 200-foot circle, keep that, but don't lower the barrier to 50%. You're going to let a lot more in the door. No one knows what that is. The city hadn't definitively identified how many additional properties will now be able to apply for special exceptions. Admittedly, with this complicated 200-foot circle, it's difficult to try to draw that circle. All of our properties are different dimensions. Our streets are different widths. It's not an easy thing to do. It'd be far easier just to simplify the block definition we have to say X number of houses to the left, X number of houses to the right, and not worry about this extended block. Sometimes they're a mile long, sometimes they're just, a standard city block. But why would the council adopt a policy now that we know is going to expand the pool of STR potential properties when you don't know with any reasonable certainty how big that pool is? I think this is a case where we're lowering the barrier. Once they get in the door, as you well know, once they've been allowed to apply and become STRs, that's it. They're gone and they're out of our housing inventory. So I urge you to reconsider and not go that route. If you have to do it sometime in the future, maybe you do it then. But go with the 200-foot circle now. That brings more in the door. That makes the legal requirements to have a safety valve that's softer than what we have now. And I ask you to reconsider that. Thank you.
You're recommending 200-foot circle with 75%?
With 75%. By doing both of those changes at once, at the same time, simultaneously, you're broadening the number of properties that are going to qualify to apply for special exceptions, pushing those to the Board of Adjustment, increasing their load, and you have no idea what that's going to be yet. Thank you.
Belinda, okay, thank you. Belinda McDonald.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me? I'm vertically challenged. I don't know if that speaker, the microphone always catches it. I just want to thank everybody for your patience. This is now year 3 of STR ordinances and changes every time. But I want to thank the council, P&Z, and previously the Historic Review Board for being involved in that process. And thanks to our citizens and property owners as well. I want to applaud the mayor for having the foresight to realize the predicament that putting a paper notice on a front door or front window could have. It invites all kinds of problems, whether it's theft or other things. So I applaud removing that from the ordinance. As far as the numbers of 50% and 75%, I've heard quite a bit of deliberation. I believe part of good policy is creating an ordinance that has requirements and regulations for people to meet, but those also need to be reasonable so that they can be attainable. I would argue that moving this to a 50% does not increase the number of people that can require, or properties that acquire a permit substantially. And I think it makes it far more likely that people could comply with it. Moving to the area of non-conformance and payment, specifically hot payment. There, I saw language, it may go into more detail, but I just want to make sure the language that I saw was that if you don't pay hot payment, your permit could be revoked. Well, is that 1 day negligence, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? I'd like to see some definition around that. As far as special exceptions are concerned, I'm hearing some ambiguity in what can be considered to either approve or disapprove a special exception. So when I hear things like they can consider lot sizes and noise, what are the parameters around that? What are those sizes of lots that wouldn't qualify? So I would just like to see more definition around that. I'd also like to echo everything that Mr. Ellis said. I've owned 3 different historic properties in Fredericksburg. In fact, the newest home I've ever owned was built in 1951. And I can tell you, every historic property requires ongoing care, love, and maintenance. I think our historic properties are a wonderful gateway for our visitors to come and experience our town and our community and see what is special about it. One of the things that I love about the historic properties is what I affectionately call quirky. They are quirky. They're fun to stay for a weekend or a few days. You don't really want to live there. But what a great tribute to our town in the way that it was created and formed in our society by having those of us like myself and others that care about those properties and to be able to get the additional revenue to take care of those. So, in closing, I'd just like to thank you again for your reason and your care in this, and appreciate your ongoing service. Thank you.
I'm going to follow up with what she's mentioned about the non-payment of bond. Is that in repeat offenses, the suspension revocation be 4 or 3? Refer to the council to revoke or no, it's 4. Within a 24-month property ownership, city council may revoke the permit or suspend the permit for a period between 90 and 100 days. Is that what you're referring to, Belinda? Because suspension is in here.
Well, it is. It's not suspension. It's how many days delinquent are you?
Oh, I see.
I think I can answer that question. So delinquency is set out by state law. So the finance department handles hotel occupancy tax delinquencies in accordance with state law. And this ordinance requires the issuance of a delinquency notice. So it would be whatever state law requires. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but it would be applied uniformly.
Is that assumed, or if we don't specify?
So in the prior section, 20-224A2, failure to timely remit applicable hotel occupancy tax is a violation under this article, etc. If all applicable tax is not paid in accordance with the delinquency notice issued by the finance department. So that's when it becomes a violation, after that delinquency notice is issued. So they would have to be delinquent under state law in order to face penalties under this ordinance.
Okay. Mr. Ellis, what part of the ordinance that we're looking at is your concern about our 2 special exceptions? Is it in terms of the historic overlay, the historic district? Aren't those already available for a special exception application? Yeah, come on.
If somebody can pull up the version from, I think, the October 17th meeting, it'll show those exceptions that have been removed. And it was included in my written comments at the bottom, a copy of what was in the previous draft. The historic properties, there was a separate classification for an R2 property within the historic district. That exception has been removed. Now those properties are subject to the 50%, 75%, whatever the council decides on threshold.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion you want to? I would like to ask you because I would love for us to have the opportunity to pass this with a unanimous vote and not pulling things out in the 3-1, whatever. Do you have any? I'd like to know your view of the 75 versus 50.
Prefer the 75.
Excuse me, from what we've heard, 75 pretty much eliminates any exception, and they just would not be able to at least apply.
I'm not concerned with putting work onto ZBA because they don't meet monthly as it is. And this is later conversation. We'll need to talk about tying up loose ends, making sure they're trained and how to do special exceptions and all that. But I don't think it would be a problem to keep it as 50 because that's not an automatic approval of an STR. It helps the process work so we can talk about what makes sense for each home instead of this mess of what we had with, block determination when every block was different.
We believe that the 50 gives the CBA more leeway to make a decision based on fuller factors.
Yeah, I love leeway. I don't want to mince words, but
Well,
I just think
75, then, well, that doesn't, no reason to talk about it.
they get an audience in front of ZBA
Yeah.
to discuss it,
Yeah.
to see if it makes sense where they are.
I'm inclined to the 75. Is it something that, I mean, because, Bobby, taking your point, that was the intention of this whole process, in my view, was to tighten up the regulation. So to say, well, nobody would have qualified. What I don't know is if there is a legal issue with, if you have something that nobody could ever qualify for, is that an effective ordinance? But we don't know that nobody could ever qualify for it. We just know that right now there hasn't been anybody apply under that circumstance.
We do know that properties have applied and did not meet the criteria for the CUP when it used a 75% threshold. So we do know
Say
that
again.
we do know that some properties have applied and were unable to qualify for a CUP with the 75% threshold under the 2022 ordinance. We also know that there are many stranded properties that would benefit from this and would maybe address some litigation threats facing the city. I don't want to go into detail on those in open session.
Well, then I have a question, and this really is a question, it's not a challenge. We're way out of balance in residential areas with STRs. We are a unique community, out of balance, with a number of properties that are STRs that are not available to people for residential use. There's arguments, well, if they weren't STRs, nobody could afford them anyway. That's a moot point. It is that they were built as residences. That's what their intention was to be. We know that we have these housing issues. So as we are trying to set regulations, I'm not saying that we pull back every STR to become a residence. The market will take care of a lot of that. It already is. But if our goal is to tighten up the regulations to reduce the opportunity for more properties to become STRs, then why 75%? Seems like that would be commending the policy rather than refuting it. I'm just asking why we're saying, well, we want people to qualify. When the attempt of my attempt, I'm not speaking for my colleagues, my attempt is to tighten the regulation so that fewer have the opportunity to become a special exception. Tell me how I need to view it.
I think Councilwoman Kirchner said it very well. If we use the 75% threshold, nothing is going to make it to ZBA. If we use the 50% threshold, ZBA will be able to use its discretion to determine when it's appropriate to allow this use. If we send nothing to ZBA, then what is their purpose? They don't help with this situation. Allowing them to use their discretion, consider the factors that we've laid out, that helps this ordinance function. It helps create a safety valve that protects the city in event of litigation.
Okay.
If we don't send anything to ZBA, there's no protection there.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Mick?
Well, just a general comment, Mayor. I think that's correct. You do want to have some safety valve issues in any type of regulatory ordinance. But your comments about housing stock are very important in the fair housing realm, which we really haven't touched on here, but it's a major concern to us legally. We need to look at the availability of low and moderate income housing, and that includes the entire market, though, regardless of pricing on what's available and how that fits into our fair housing requirements as a city. And we do have those under federal law.
So given that, yes, the recommendation though is 50 because that makes that's, let me put it in my terms, that's good government. In other words, we have this. I mean, I know it's a opinion question, but there's no point in having an ordinance that there's no as exception ordinance that there's no way anybody could ever qualify, because that essentially is another action by the government. Okay.
I think that's accurate.
Did I have that right from y'all? I would be inclined to the 75, but I have 250s and 275s, and a tie goes, a tie fails. So
I can live with 50.
Okay. I want us to be together on the vote. But I wanted to make my case. Anything else? What about anything further with regard to the special exceptions, R2, R1, historic district, STR facilities?
take issue with the fact that only STR owners are able to own old homes and live and have a place that is small. It's okay to live in a small old home and not be wealthy. And there are people that do that here. There are people who do that in other towns. I just wanted to make the
Well, also, I still think our zoning needs to be looked at. That's going to clear up some things.
we don't want hollowed out downtown from non-residents.
So you're good with where we are?
I'm great.
Okay.
Where we are.
Me too. I like that. She just took a breath. Anything? Nope. All right. Mick, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything with regard to your support of my comment about our housing stock. That is a discussion for another time.
It's a discussion we need to have in Fredericksburg because fair housing is an issue here. It's not just affordable housing or low income housing, it's the entire market.
Right.
And we have had the unfortunate privilege in our legal career representing cities in the same situation. Right. You don't want to be.
So we are unique.
I think you do. Well, you have problems that other communities do, but some of them are more pronounced.
I think in terms of scale.
Yes.
All right. I just want to make sure that I wasn't missing anything with regard to moving on this particular amendment because we're all anxious to do this today. All right. We are ready now are we ready to take action on this? Council? Ready? Yes. All right. So, Rachel, you need to guide us how to do this appropriately with these.
Yes, I have motion language drafted. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. I've got that we're changing the criteria for a special exception to consider whether the properties in a 200-foot radius are zoned CBD, C2, or CF, excluding schools. I've got that we're adding a factor for the ZBA to consider whether any schools operate within a 200-foot radius of a property seeking a special exception for an STR stranded property. Yeah, my bad. Thank you. And I've got removing the requirement to post an outward-facing physical permit on an STR. Am I missing any additional changes?
Not for me. Emily, Bobby.
And you included the 50%.
The 50% is currently in the draft.
Okay. It's in there.
I think that's all I had. We have a whole lot of staff here in the background too. Did we miss anything?
Yeah.
Anything?
Mr. Tom, you got a comment? Would you mind coming up? We got to get you memorialized here. Tom Musselman, I'm a resident of the city.
Ditto. Do you need to say public or private schools?
I don't think it's essential, but we can if you would like to do that for clarity, Council.
Well, that's the issue because
That's
I think
the intent, because
that's the intent.
if there's an R2, there's an R2 private school, maybe two of them.
It's no big deal to add private as well, is it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, staff, before we take our vote, or we need to hear from you about anything. I know you've looked at this, 20,000 times or so. Let us know if we're on the right track because we're about to pull the trigger.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate all of the comments and thank you for inviting staff's opinions. I did just want to point out when we talk about the historic district, specifically R2, City Council and P&Z have considered 10, maybe a dozen, 10 or 12 R2 historic properties for a CUP. 3 or 4 of those were new because they failed to renew their previous STR permit. And I think looking at the comp plan data, we found that there's 450 short-term rentals in our historic district. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I had one question I see in my notes here.
Shelley,
Yeah, no.
I just wanted to know from a point as renewals and what else, where are we? Are we kept up? Are we do? I assume we're doing better, but
We are. And thank you for asking. No, we have over 1,000 permitted active STRs today. I think we have 50 or more pending. Jan could probably give better answers to those numbers.
Good morning, everybody. I looked at those this morning. We have 1,055 that are currently permitted and active. We've got 29 that are pending, and I have 79 pending under review, which means they've got some things that need to be as I put it, judged. So we're looking really, really good.
Okay, say that number again. How many total?
1,055 that are
155.
literally active and permitted for probably at least another year. And then we have 29 that I'm working on that have come in and need to be processed. And then I have 79 that have some things that need attention. And so I have emails out to owners, for example, to get a correct 24/7 contact.
And that's all zones.
All zones, yes, sir. Yeah.
And what's the timing on those as far as period of time?
I'm waiting on people to return an email or a telephone call or some kind of touch so that I can get the correct information to be on the permit. I don't like to send out a permit that has the incorrect information on it. Then I just have to do it again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. One other thing, sorry. Transfer of ownership. I thought we decided to stop automatic transfers of this amendment for any new operations after the effective date. Is that not? Just keep the, no, it doesn't mean that they can't, the new owner can't apply, it just means it's not automatic. It removes the STR permit as a commodity. And y'all, we not discuss that?
I don't believe we discussed that at the last meeting,
Okay.
but we can remove automatic transfers for STR permits where they are permitted by right. I would just recommend not touching the STRs in zoning districts where they're no longer permitted by right.
All right. Okay. Are we there? Are we ready to consider the approval of the ordinance? Do you need to make one more statement? Okay. You have a verbatim. We make sure we get this right. Who wants to make it? Sorry?
You want to do the honors?
I move to approve the short-term rental ordinance, item number Z 2318, with the following changes. Change the criteria for a special exception to consider whether the properties in a 200-foot radius are zoned CBD, C2, or PF, excluding schools, whether public or private. 2, adding a factor for the ZBA to consider whether any schools operate within a 200-foot radius of a property seeking a special exception or an STR stranded property. And 3, removing the requirement to post an outward-facing physical permit on an STR.
I second that motion.
A motion second on this. Any further discussion, questions on the motion? Let's take a roll call just for the record.
Mayor Cooper,
Aye.
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember Watson,
Aye.
Councilmember Christian,
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Mick. Thank you all for your help. I want to say a special thank you to the previous council who did a lot of this work for us and laid the foundation well. Also want to thank the people who served on the STR task force, which actually was, our first meeting was a year ago today. So thank you to Belinda McDonald, who's here, Randy Briley, who's on it, Tammy Smith, who's not here, Mimi Bartell, Mike Mahoney, Ray Rogers, and Bill Snyder. Thank you to Janelle Chapman, to Shelby Collier. Of course, Jan has come on since we've started doing this. Anna has been inundated with these issues. Thank you all for your conversations and your emails and your guidance. I believe that we've come up with a good compromise. We knew that there would never be full agreement to anything, but I believe that as messy as the process has been, we've come up, personally, we've come up with a good conclusion. Thank you, Council. Any comments, final comments on that issue?
Thanks to staff.
All right. Item 7B is to consider the approval of Resolution 2023-17R, approving a 3-year lease. Oh, we're pulling that, sorry. That is an agenda item being pulled until we get some further information. There's been a development on that one that we're going to need to wait to put that in another meeting, correct? Right, Clem? Okay. Yes, sir. Item 8A, consider the approval of giving the city manager authority to enter a hotel occupancy tax agreement for 23-24 between the city of Fredericksburg and the Convention and Visitor Bureau. Clem?
And Mayor, Council, again, this is giving me authorization to sign this very large contract with the CBB. It's an annual contract. This amount was budgeted in the FY24 budget for the purpose of advertising and promoting Fredericksburg, for the purpose of attracting visitors and tourists to Fredericksburg. CBB also acts as an advisory board to the council. These funds also provide employees and equipment to carry out these functions. There's a little bit, $22,700 included for maintenance of the building and ground maintenance. This is divided up, the 4.3 million divided up into roughly $1,078,000 installments quarterly beginning October 1st, January, April, and July. We do have Brady Clausen, CBB, with the CBB with us today. If you have any specific questions.
Brady, would you like to make any comments today? Okay. So this is a housekeeping item generally with specific numbers.
That's correct. Anytime there's a contract in front of me to sign that is this large.
Is it different? I assume the numbers change every year.
They do, and this represents the city's 5/7 of our hot collections. And if you have a question about county contribution to the CBB budget, I know there have been some questions about that in the past. Brady, I'll answer those questions.
Okay.
Is this prospective? Is this our best guess of what hot's going to be?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. If it goes way under, I think there's a clause in here, right, that you don't have to make those 4 payments at that level. Is that correct?
Right. And can you speak to that specifically, Krista or Brady, either one? And
I've actually not seen the most recent contract to see if there is that clause.
it should be exactly the same as previous.
What do you know about it, Brady?
It is the same.
Odds are we're going to do great and we're going to have more, but just in case something happens.
Traditionally in the past, well, first of all, good morning, Mayor, Council. Traditionally in the past, again, since this is based on a projection, the CBB has historically received the 4 payments because, as Councilmember Kirchner mentioned, traditionally there's an overage, and there is no true up at the end of the year. And so what is anticipated to be 5/7, obviously, as we are budgeting and whatnot at the beginning of the year, tends to be on the lower threshold. There is always that concern because we do see, obviously, occupancy tax ebb and flow month to month, being 30 days in arrears. But traditionally, we have received those 4 payments on a quarterly basis, and then at the end of the year, it is kind of flat because we have received what was anticipated to be 5/7, but then what is actually collected is retained by the city with the 2 7s.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just real quickly, I attended the county commissioners. They also do a 5/7, so we're parity with county and the city.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Brady, while you're here, was there any kind of significant bump in activity, visitor activity, the weekend of the annual events?
No, sir. It was pretty much a traditional October weekend in the city.
Thank
you. Yeah, yes, sir.
All right. Council, what do you want to do?
I move that we approve giving the city manager authority to enter into the hot grant agreement for the 23-24 year.
Second. Motion second to approve this item. The city manager authority to enter this contract. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8B, consider the approval of the sidewalk construction contract. Mr. Williamson, thank you for the email explanation with the graphs and the explanations.
Sir. Good morning, Mayor and Council.
I'm glad to be speaking with you today. This item is for the approval of the renewal of our contract with Hazlett's Concrete to basically perform our sidewalk improvement program as well as various other flat work projects around the city of Fredericksburg. So we'd like to take this opportunity to come before you, give a short presentation about what we accomplished this past year, get some proposed projects in front of you for the upcoming year, and receive any recommendations or comments from each of you. So with that, we'll just go ahead and jump into this presentation. We're going to just kind of hit that overview and receive your recommendations at the end or any further comments. So in this past year, you'll remember that we budgeted $50,000 for our sidewalk improvement program. And one of our first projects that we addressed was Austin Street. So this was we were able to complete the sidewalk and kind of fill in all the gaps that were on this block and extend this all the way over from Orange Street to Milam Street. We worked closely with those property owners to kind of move around their existing infrastructure and kind of work with them. Other project was down on the 300 block of Lincoln Street. This is across from Warner Warehouse. This was important because our upcoming shared use bridge project is going to wrap that sidewalk around from Llano to Hoover to the south side of the Lincoln Street Bridge. So this went north of the Lincoln Street Bridge and now has a continuous path all the way up to Main Street. So this was a nice project for us to complete in this past year. And our last project was in the 800 block of East Main. This is basically the extension of where that sidewalk ended at Olive Street and kind of continued another block there on East Main Street. So that took our sidewalks on that side of town out just a little bit further and got obviously ADA access across the front of Navajo Grill there that you can see. And so that was another great project for us in this past year. Looking ahead to continuing this program, we budgeted $150,000. So basically kind of meeting our average after last year. And we have a number of projects that we are putting in front of you for consideration. And we'll kind of detail those just now. The first one will be basically another sidewalk to go across Old Fair Park. This is between Park Street and Hoover Street. And we'll go kind of through that playground area between the basketball court, skate park, and the playground there in Old Fair Park. This will basically go from the Boys and Girls Club to the playground area and then over to Hoover Street where that shared use bridge project will also be under construction. So this will take that sidewalk and pedestrian access all the way across there. And additionally, to the peanut factory and any future development that might occur at that location. This is the 1800 block of North Adams. So if you can think about the elementary school and Adams kind of going up the elementary school's frontage, there's a sidewalk that goes back into this neighborhood and stops there at Edgewood Drive. This is a project that was kind of brought to our attention from some parents and residents in the community requesting to extend this sidewalk at least another block and bring that all the way up to Driftwood. They submitted some pictures. This is, school pickup and drop off goes a long ways down North Adams there, and as kids are walking up the sidewalk to go to cars or walk back to their neighborhoods and things like that, when that sidewalk ends right there, they'll either step out into the street or continue to walk kind of on the side of yards and stuff like that. So this project would just basically take that sidewalk a little bit further out and just provide more safe access for kids and other pedestrians to walk up North Adams there. While we're in the area, just one block over is a small gap in between two existing sidewalks that kind of goes across a little drainage channel right there. So while we're making those other improvements in the 1800 block, we would ask our contractor to come over here and finish this short piece for a fairly small dollar amount while they're in the area. Now, swinging around to kind of the southwest portion of town, this is West Live Oak Street. This would extend the sidewalk in the 200 and 300 blocks, kind of going west of Walgreens out towards South Milam. Kind of in that 300 block there, we're having a little bit of some pavement edge issues. Our drainage and curbing project would actually construct a curb in that block. And while we're there with our contractor, we would propose the construction of the sidewalk in this area. So that curbing along there would protect our pavement edge and some erosion that's happening. And then the sidewalk would obviously just kind of fit right in with that project. Pedestrian access to Cross Mountain. This is a project that's kind of been on the books for a while, but has been somewhat difficult to complete on the North Milam side. Kind of trying to work in TechStop right away and around some drainage infrastructure there that's been tough. We have spoken with the property owner that has an electric easement along the west side of his property. So basically what we proposed to them is that we would ask for a pedestrian access easement within those same bounds to get up to the Cross Mountain Park. That would allow us to avoid getting into TechStop right away and reconstructing the drainage infrastructure in that right of way there. So we could kind of move around. And this is mainly for the Cross Mountain kind of neighborhood residents to have that safe access to go up to the park. They don't have to walk up the side of North Milam or anything like that, or have to drive to the park. This would just give them another basically point of access. So we would work with that property owner there to make sure it was secure for going through and along that easement. We're also looking at a project on Main Street. This is in the 200 block in front of Rathskeller and Derkuchenladen. The sidewalk there is old. It's some pavers. The grout's kind of cracking and being chipped out and stuff like that. As the engineering department and police departments have walked and reviewed the sidewalks on Main Street, this area was highlighted as where the bicycle police are responding to falls and trips and things of that nature. So we're proposing a reconstruction of this sidewalk to take these pavers out, have an ADA compliant and improved surface there to try to address those fall issues and kind of clean everything up in this area. We also had removed a tree in this area and are going to be redoing some pavers as well on that corner. And lastly, we have a project that would extend sidewalk from the Highway Street and 16 South intersection. This is where Billy Drive connects to Highway Street right there, just across from the tennis courts, and would basically extend sidewalk from those pedestrian signage there that was recently kind of revamped by TechStop, take it up the 16 South right of way and connect in with the Junior Drive and kind of have another and more safe access across there and kind of organize the pedestrian access from that strip center that's across Highway Street and to the school itself. So we would work with the school district on this one. We would reach out to them and basically tie that in a manner that would kind of most work with their operations and coordinate that project with them. So in summary, here's our list of projects with their various price tags approximately. We add a 10% contingency to all the unit costs that are in our contract with Hazlet, and just for various things that we might run into. But we also have a remaining budget of about $10,000. And we can either use that for any additional projects that you might recommend, or hang on to it for any other rehab projects that kind of pop up throughout the year. Sometimes there are cracking or uneven sidewalks that get reported. Having a little bit of a balance there helps us kind of react to those on the fly, which is pretty helpful. So if we would like to go back and look or discuss any of these projects that we have here, or any other projects that y'all might have in mind, there's a link here to our sidewalk map that we can go around, look around town at any other areas that you might consider, but I'd be happy to hear your comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your work on last year's projects, and thank you, council, for sticking with me on the additional 50,000 because we can make up what we had to take out last year. 150,000 sure goes really quick. So I think these are good projects. I know you mentioned, because I would love to have Main Street have sidewalks all the way down, but since that is US Highway 290, a lot of times there's issues with TxDOT. So we can't just go and start building all of there, because some of it could be their responsibility too. But I think these are great, and what we're learning is anytime we can have a buffer where appropriate, it helps people realize that there are actually people on the sidewalks.
I think this is a great list, and I really applaud the focus around the schools as well. I do live behind the middle school, so I do see a lot of kids coming out of there, coming from college down Crockett to Center, and there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of kids walking the street. So I'm also aware that that school is not going to be around forever, but if you could maybe take a look at that and see if that might, I don't want to consume the budget. It looks like it's pretty well allocated, but just give it some consideration. Could we do something there? Is there a ROI benefit if the school's open for 1 year, 2 years? Does it make sense?
Right.
Just a thought.
Well, honestly, any pedestrian improvements that we can make, either for students or just locals, residents in the area, it's always a benefit. So it's very nice, and we work with Hazlet very well. A lot of times when they see some of those material costs drop, they'll actually lower their prices as well. So, if there's an opportunity where we're under budget, we can definitely look at additional projects, either mid-year or in the summer. Thank you.
This is an action item.
It is.
I so make a motion to approve the contract, the sidewalk construction.
Second.
Motion second to approve the sidewalk construction contract as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Evan. Item C, consider approval of the water and sewer main replacement construction contract. Mr. Canadian.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Very similar to the item that you just approved that Evan presented on, the sidewalks. This is a project where we replace undersized 2-inch water mains and 4-inch sewer mains in areas of town. The project was set up in the exact same manner that the sidewalk project was set up. We developed a set of contract docs that listed a bunch of different details. We got unit pricing for each one of those details. We then identify locations where 2-inch mains need to be replaced. They're not served, these areas aren't served adequately for fire protection. We have a number of leaks. Getting out ahead of the paving project and doing these water main replacements, sewer main replacements before paving the next year. A whole lot of different things goes into the consideration on the location of replacing of those mains. We entered this, we bid this project in fiscal year 22. So this is, we've done 2 years worth of construction with JM Pipeline, contractor that does quite a bit of work in this area, utility work that is. We have worked with JM Pipeline on their unit cost. They actually went down just slightly. If you recall back in fiscal year 2022, material shortages and so forth were very unknown. So they had a little bit of a cushion, I would say, in some of their material pricing, which they have actually dropped as part of your consideration today. It's not a huge drop in pricing, but it is a slight drop in pricing. Previous years, we've allocated $300,000 for water and $300,000 for sewer. What we found last year during the project was we identified a lot more water mains that need to be replaced and not as many sewer mains. That's the utility that I would say we have more issues on. So we're recommending $450,000 for the water main replacement and $150,000 for the sewer main replacement, for the same total of $600,000 for your consideration on this contract. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Whereabouts is this going to be? What part of the city?
We have been working on the west side, west center primarily, and working our way back towards Llano. We'd probably do some work there as part of this, assuming council approves. We'd continue in that area. We did some work on West Travis as well, replacing of some 2-inch water mains in that area. So likely West Center will probably consume most of this. We have not identified the exact locations, but we'll look at the paving project and so forth before we issue the work order to the contractor.
So that's where it's been this year, correct?
We did West Center. We did at Travis. We did a bore underneath Milam as part of a future transportation project, and then we did some work on West Travis. Yes, sir.
With regard to timing and so forth on these replacement projects, as well as sidewalk, these are ongoing through the budget year, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Make motion, we approve item number 8 and C, I guess.
All right.
Water and sewer main replacement.
Motion second to approve this water and sewer replacement construction contract. Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Chris. And while you're on, let's do number D. Consider the approval of the amendment, the lower Colorado, the LCRA electric easement.
Thank you. So the Lower Colorado River Authority approached the city in regards to amending, really getting a new easement next to their existing easement. This the location of this is west of town, off of West Windcrest. It's basically the detention pond off of Wellness Court, which is the little cul-de-sac street, again off of West Windcrest. LCRA is currently doing work, building a new substation called the Peach Substation off of Post Oak Road. It's located there on top of the hill. They are doing some work basically between Fredericksburg and Harper on a new transmission line. If you've been out 290 West, you've seen the infrastructure going in. This is LCRA has requested this easement as part of that overall project. And what it really has to do with is coming out of the Peach Substation, tying into some existing electric infrastructure, but it all has to do with the way they brace their post and so forth. They are proposing to install some new, they're called mono post, single post, with the electric lines within this easement that they've requested. This particular easement is not in any sort of usable property from a development standpoint by the city. This property was given, dedicated to the city as part of a subdivision development for the purpose of a detention pond that currently does have some electric infrastructure within that detention pond. So be happy to answer any questions that council has regarding this item.
Make a motion, we approve item number 8. D, yes, the amendment to the Lower Colorado River Authority.
Second. Motion second to approve the amendment to this easement. Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Council, I want to take a short break. We've been here an hour, 50 minutes or so. The rest of the agenda item has a lot to do with how we're going to set up some meetings, some updates, and holidays and so forth. Not that that's not important. This is a good time to take a short break, so let's take about 7 minutes. Recess.
Nice job.
your patience. We're going to be at item 8E, considering the approval of the 2024 City of Fredericksburg city holidays. Mrs. Shelley.
No change.
There, we are requesting 13 holidays. I included, just for your, in case you wanted to know, the county's holiday schedule as well. They get an extra one more than us, but and if you want to give us a few more, we'll happily take them.
I didn't look at theirs. What is that one day more?
They have Texas Independence Day, March 1st.
They don't take what?
They take Texas Independence Day on March 1st.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I had a question. Do we not, it's New Year's Eve, is that not a holiday? New Year's Eve?
Yes, but no,
It's
it
not.
is not.
Okay.
New Year's.
Just New Year's Day. And then, what's the other thing? Oh, eclipse. Are we just going to be working on eclipse? We can't just take it off.
We'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll be working, but maybe not in our offices. We want people to be able to enjoy that, but be able to respond. Yes, we.
Okay, so not an official
Right,
staff
so
holiday.
unofficial.
Make motion we approve the 2024 holiday for the city of Fredericksburg.
Second. Second to, motion second to approve the schedule as presented. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item 8F, discuss and provide direction regarding work session dates and topics.
Okay, Mayor, Council, and again, this is just intended to be a primer for the council and also let the public know and hear council discussion about some of the topics we may be discussing in work sessions coming up. Mayor and I had a discussion just yesterday. I know we have a lot of meetings, council meetings, some special meetings with B&Z regarding the comp plan coming up between now and the end of the year. I'm not intending to load the council up with a lot of extra meetings. These are intended to extend out into the early spring, February, March time frame even. But again, you can see from the list, these are some of the items that we have been discussing with you at the staff level. The 2025 Food and Wine Fest, Tony just mentioned some of the changes that will be coming. We really need to form a committee and discuss, get direction from the council moving forward with that new event. I would say that one probably sooner than later. And I wanted to let the council and the public watching or in attendance today know that we're working on a lot of different sources of general fund revenue, trying to balance that revenue flowing in from our citizens and our visitors. We have a list of 43 items. We've had a number of different brainstorming sessions. Some of these are going to require a lot of additional work and some decisions by the council. So I think sometime maybe after the first of the year, we bring this to the council and get your nod to move forward with some of the items that we may be considering. Bond election, we talked a little bit about this during the budget process a little bit earlier this year. In terms of council priorities, we did see transportation projects and parks very high on the list for a number of different council members. City facilities, we also talked a lot about that, the need for a city hall, police station, fire station, and so forth. So really wanted to give you an idea what a bond election might look like in terms of tax impact, some of the different ways we can move forward with trying to get some of these projects done. We've talked a lot about a strategic plan. We showed you an example from City of Buda during our May 25th meeting at Chase Bank. Strategic plan, I think, would be important moving forward after the adoption of the comprehensive plan, pulling the visioning document back out, really getting a concise roadmap together that would continue from council to council. That's an item I'm very interested in and everything contained within that. We've been talking a lot about Main Street, not just recently, but over the past decade, a lot of changes, whether it's no chains on Main, open container, we always hear about trash and recycling, sidewalk cleaning. Bobby has sent me pictures and video of these miniature street cleaning vehicles when he's been vacationing. Parking management. Not parking meters and parking management. And you'll hear a lot from Anna as part of the comprehensive planning process about tax increment reinvestment zones, how we can take some of that growing property tax and reinvest it back into some of these areas. And then finally, and I mentioned this again back in May, any new ordinances or amendments to ordinances the council may want to consider. So I'm not really looking for to nail down any dates right now, but if there are any of these items or others that council would like to discuss during a work session, I like to keep work sessions 1 or 2 items, maybe 3, depending on the items. I don't want to ever not finish or have to rush through those. So if there are a few of these that council is interested in discussing, or if you have a date in mind, again, I just wanted to give y'all a primer, and I wanted to give the audience and those listening in, those watching, an idea of some of the things that may be coming up for discussion.
Clinton, I'd like to, on Main Street, I think we need to look at that as an overall project, not take individual items out of your list, and there's a few others, I'm sure, but we need to discuss Main Street and possibly even come up with a strategic plan for Main Street as a whole. I don't think we need to rush into any decision about Main Street. It's been developed and changed many times over the last 175 years, and it's the heart of our tourist industry. It's the heart of our economic system in Fredericksburg, and it's a huge, huge deal for us. And I don't want to rush into any decision that might alter that in a negative way.
I would agree with you, Bobby.
I think this is a great list. I'm curious on timing, because when are we supposed to adopt the comprehensive plan? Ideally.
So we just had our meeting with the consultants yesterday, and we expect you to have the draft, to have the meeting with the joint meeting with planning and zoning. Just texted that to you in January, and then you would individually adopt it. They would recommend approval in their meeting in February, and then it'd come to you in February for final adoption. So in the meantime, the CPAC, the advisory committee, is going to meet next week for the Parks Master Plan, and then the comp plan, the CPAC will meet on December 12th to review that draft. And so then the real public face of that will be between December and February for adoption.
Okay. I'm just thinking through some of the tools that might be suggested in the comprehensive plan. We've been waiting years. We always hear, let's wait till the comprehensive plan. And I don't want to have to wait another 6 months to learn about TERSs. There's things that we need to build into these workshops that we know beyond a shadow of a doubt are going to be recommended. That would be my preference.
So Clinton, I think the 5 items you've outlined here are all very important. From my perspective, item 2, new sources of general fund revenue, I think I would prioritize personally number 1. Item number 3, the future bond election for transportation, would be item number 2. They're all important, but just for my chair, that's what I see.
Are you needing further direction from us today, Clinton, regarding the ones we'd like to pursue for the end of the year, or any of them for the end of the year? Or
Well, again, I think the Food and Wine Fest, kicking off the getting together the committee for that, and really giving a staff direction and hashing the details out on that. I would prefer that to happen sooner than later, and as soon as maybe this month or next month. And it probably won't be the only time we get together and discuss that. But if there's anything like that that's just glaring that you'd like to talk about, otherwise I don't really mind keeping it pretty light over the next couple of months until we get into next year and we can get a little bit more aggressive. Holidays coming up, a lot of people on vacation. And
how
so
about your council? Do you feel there's something that the Food and Wine Fest definitely? Is there another one on the list that you think we ought to make sure we get to before 2024?
I agree. Yeah.
strategic plan, are we thinking we'll wait till after the comprehensive plan and then start that? I know there's related but separate.
Yeah, I would agree that to form the committee of the Food and Wine Fest is, I think, key because 2 years to plan an event is really not enough. So it'll be here for you. Dave.
Seems like a long time, but it goes so fast. Yeah. All right, well then, I'm hearing consensus that we'd like to address that top of the list. Anything else on that?
No, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Number 9, city manager's report.
Okay, Mayor, I have 3 items I would like to update you on. And the first is an update on the sports park soccer fields. And we have Dan Kemp and Mark Cornett with us today. And I'd really like for Dan to talk just a little bit about.
Say Mark left.
Yeah, as soon as I said his name, he just ran out the door. Okay, I think he has a board for illustration.
Thank you for your patience.
But thank you both for sticking around. And I will say before Dan says anything, soccer fields, sports facilities out on the property the city owns by the airport, something we've been talking about for the last 7 or 8 years. We have 2 failed bond elections for a sports park. The need for soccer is huge, and I will tell you the numbers are growing, both in the city and the county in terms of kids participating. We have someone with a lot of energy and motivation in Dan Kemp. He's very aggressive when it comes to pursuing anything, whether it's work related or not, I'm pretty sure. So we don't want to lose that opportunity, and I think we're pretty much getting closer to the home stretch here. I'm not going to give it away before I let Dan add all the details. So Dan.
Yeah, thank y'all. That's first of all, I guess we formed Fredericksburg Friends of the Fields a couple 3 years ago as a funding entity to hold some fundraisers, try to raise some money to get the momentum going. And then also Hill Country United Soccer is our club. The rec association is going to roll up into Hill Country United as well. So we have one entity with all things soccer, which I think will help a lot with Andrea and and communication purposes. So it's funny, I was sitting there waiting on my kids to get dressed, take them to school, and popped open Facebook, and good old memory popped up from 6 years ago today when we had an election. I don't go down that path anymore, but that's how long it's been going. We started our funding in October 21, and had about $150,000 to $200,000 of pledges that came in. That was a long time ago, so we're rolling back through those pledges, make sure most of them have stuck now. And then I got a phone call about 3 months ago from a gentleman that I've talked to for over about 3 years. And when I saw it pop up, I was like, it's not like we talk all the time. So he said, how's soccer going? How are the fields going? Told him, he goes, I'm ready to do something. Let's talk. So many conversations. I got Mark. He started redoing and polishing it up. And about 2 weeks ago, they called me and they awarded us with $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the Adam R. Scripps Foundation. And so it was really cool. So the timeline's coming. We have enough. The overall budget's probably around $3 million now. But we've got enough to get phase 1 done, complete, and have grass irrigated. Our plan is to get started in February. If we have seeds in the ground in April, we will be playing rec soccer in fall, September, ready to go. So the Dust Bowl, no more. So yeah, phase 1 for that. I think phase 2, that will be all grass planted, irrigation, everything ready to go. Phase 2, the money comes in kind of 2 separate things. We'll get a first chunk in the first quarter of 24. The second million will come first quarter of 25. There's a little gap in there, so now we're full full bore going and calling our pledgers, making sure they're up, having some more fundraising going, talking to some other people to get the rest of it. And I think it'll come. We've got the big hurdle stepped over. So second phase will be restroom concessions, the lighting, all that stuff. Priority really is just grass and irrigated and do it so we can get the rest of it going. So that'll be late 24, 25, probably phase 2. So I think our plan now, we've been in discussions with Clinton and staff and everybody, plans moving forward. But the next thing, I think the P&Z is December 7th, something like that. So we'll get a site plan ready to go. We'll get that submitted and go. So we're excited. Finally, it's here. So thanks for y'all's patience and working with us and sticking with us. So it's going to happen. Congratulations. You bet. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank all of you.
Thank you.
I'll just say the obvious. People with that kind of money to philanthropically share do it because they know that it's going to be used and used well. So congratulations to you, Dan, and your team, and your tenacity.
Thank you, Dan and Mark. Okay, just a quick neighborhood town hall update. Randy mentioned some of this from October 26th. This is number 18 of roughly 25 meetings that we're having, community town hall meetings that we're having. This was 2 areas combined, the area generally north of Main Street, just north of City Hall, all the way. Lee, you might have to help me out with the boundary to the Morning Glory. Thank you very much. The meeting was held at the Memorial Presbyterian Church. We had about 25 in attendance, roughly. And as Randy mentioned, we added a few more animals to the list that people were having problems with. There was a cat issue, and the guy later on said he had a squirrel issue. So the cat and the squirrel issue got together, and I think we're working that out, it sounds like. An Airstream parked on the road. A lot of you have probably driven by. The Airstream parked on Moore Street. That spurred a lot of conversation. Crosswalks not being visible. We had some loose aggregate issues, parking. There were some comments about Oktoberfest, some of the commotion in neighborhoods. But it was a pretty mild meeting. Again, very well attended. It appears every time we do this, much like coffee with the city manager, people really appreciate the update. Having council members there, having a number of staff, we'll have 5, 6, 7, 8 staff there. There's generally not a question that we can't answer right there, and we've already resolved a few of these issues. So again, number 18 of roughly 25, since we're combining some of these smaller areas. And thank you for the council that continues to attend these. I think they're very well received, and we're getting really good participation. I don't know if you had anything additional to add, Randy?
No, I just reiterate, it's an opportunity to speak without any filter to city staff, council, the mayor, and it's a great opportunity. So thank you for your continued support of doing this.
Thank you.
When is the next one?
We're going to have to turn to the November being planned. Thank you, Lee. Last item I wanted to update the council on is Fredericksburg Citizen University. This is an idea that Shelley Goodwin brought to me, and it's one of a ton of things she brings to me. This one actually stuck. This gives citizens that are interested in going through a roughly 11-month program the opportunity to learn the ins and outs of city organization, boards and commissions related to doing city business, city council, and so forth. We would like to begin advertising for applicants, and I think everybody has a copy of the application sometime in the next couple of weeks. We're looking for roughly 15 to 20 participants in this program, and we'll make that selection toward the end of the year. It looks like kick off the program in late January. The courses will all be after 5 PM. I think they're scheduled for 6:30 on a Tuesday. That's what we're looking at, right? The fourth Tuesday of every month. Shelley will coordinate all of this, but the entire organization will be involved, including the council. In fact, I put the mayor on the spot. We put the mayor on the spot with one of the kickoff meetings with the class will be a message from the mayor and the council. But again, just gives people a real comprehensive view into how the city operates. If there are anybody is interested in running for council or running for a board or maybe applying for a job or just learning more, it's a good opportunity. I was out to dinner last night with my wife, and there was someone that actually stopped me and asked me about this and said that they were interested. They heard about it. So we might get more applications than we know what to do with, but we'll help. We'll work with the council to sort through those applications and again land on about 20. That will wrap this up toward the end of next year. Be happy to answer any questions.
This is well thought out. I love the agenda, the outlook for the year. I think it's awesome. I think this is just what we need to help increase the pipeline of people who are wanting to serve but might want to know more before running.
Right.
Thank you.
I'll give all the credit to Shelley.
Thank you, Shelley.
And that is all I have under my update.
All right. Next item is the future agenda.
Okay, and coming up at our next regular council meeting on November 21st, we have casting of votes for the Gillespie Central Appraisal District Board of Directors. We've made nominations before. This will actually be votes for those board members. I'll give my comprehensive update during this meeting. Again, if there's anything the council would like to see different or additional, let us know. We're trying to improve on that report every month. And we have a development services item, Anna.
Yes, we'll be bringing the fee ordinance. So some of the development fees that we're currently charging, we're looking to increase. Some fees that we've never charged, such as annexation or zoning verification, and then the short-term rental fee adjustment, and some engineering fees that we haven't charged before.
But back to the city manager report, we talked about having Tim with the EDC do a readout periodically. I don't know if we decided monthly or quarterly, but when would it be appropriate for him to come and hit on maybe 3 topics of interest?
And I talked to Tim about that. We just have to coordinate the timing where he's not providing that information to the council before he's providing it to his board. So it might not be the latest up-to-date information, but he would like the opportunity to present any new information to his board before he gives that update presentation to the council. So he has really good numbers. For those of you that have attended those board meetings, it's always eye-opening. Financial status reports that he gives. I'm working with Tim to try to get him in here as part of that update. I think it's real good information, not only for the council, but the public, to hear in a little bit different format. So I'm working on that with Tim.
What is the Travis Tucker Z2306? Is that going to be?
That has been pulled. Apparently. That will not be considered by planning and zoning tomorrow, so it will not be on the 21st.
Anything further on for your agenda? All right. We're now at the executive session item. We have one, consider and discuss annual evaluation. I'll take a motion to go in.
I'll move that we go from regular session to executive session.
Second. Motion second to go into executive session from regular session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?